What's the big idea?
And we are on. Here we are. Episode number. Do you know it?
38.
Oh, yes, 38.
Nice.
That's good. Can you think of any athletes who had the number 38? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I can't.
I can't think of one.
Well,
Well, that's a great start.
Yep.
Anyway, today we are talking all about
Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson,
Yeah.
The Rock.
Yeah.
I don't think that. It doesn't matter. Anyway, no. Today we're talking about what is it again? What the difference? We're talking about gossip versus constructive criticism, right? The differences between each. I think a lot of parents get trapped sometimes because they hear their kid talking about the team or the coach, and they don't know whether or not they should jump in, discuss. Is it gossip? Is it constructive criticism? Is it helpful to jump in sometimes? Is it not helpful to jump in? It really depends on the nature of what's being discussed, I guess. So, early thoughts.
Well, I think if it's a conversation that your kid is, kind of venting to you, just you, the parent, like no one else around, I think that's a good environment for whether it's gossip or constructive criticism, because then at least it's just isolated amongst all of you, and then you can kind of just like hear them out. Because the main thing of someone initiating gossip is always like the first thing that happens until someone's mature and they kind of realize, like, we'll get into the negatives of gossip. But initially, when it's like the first thing that comes out of someone's mouth, it's just like they just need a vent, they need someone to hear them. And then it kind of leaves a space for, like, I think a great way to start with them is just like open-ended questions on their thought process of why they're saying what they're saying and like what they're feeling. And then maybe it can be turned around into like a little investigative work. And then it kind of, especially if they're mad at someone, or
so maybe before we get too much into how to deal with it, maybe we should talk like so how would you define gossip maybe versus constructive criticism?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
It's tricky for me to define out, but like,
well, why is gossip negative? Because you mentioned gossip as being more negative.
Yeah, it's mostly just accusatory, and then there isn't a lot of like reasoning behind it. It's just like I would say a lot of it is blaming, or a lot of it is just being upset at outcomes outside of someone's control. A lot of it is emotionally initiated, like after a loss, or like maybe they were taken off the bench or something like that, or
taken off the court and put on the bench, you mean?
That's what I meant, yeah. Taken off the bench. Yeah, taken off the court, put on the bench. They're slighted somehow, or maybe there's something going on where the player isn't fitting into the team dynamic. There might be a little bit of bullying going on.
Right.
So it's starting from quote unquote negative things already, and that, kind of that saying of energy feed the same, what this type of energy feeds that type of energy, so negativity will just lead into more negativity, right? But it is, yeah, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
No, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's right. I think one of the big things that I would say about gossip versus constructive criticism is constructive criticism is rooted in fact, and gossip has a lot of emotion thrown in. Like once you cross into like almost editorializing, then you're throwing in biased things into the discussion. Like, the minute you start talking about a coach or something or a player, and then you might start referencing their body or they're ugly too, or then you get into like gossip or unproven facts about people, right? Like, I heard this about them versus what you've observed and what you've seen. Like, gossip by definition,
rumors.
Gossip by definition is
right.
like, the rumor stuff, I heard this about her, or I heard this about him, or that's definitely the gossip thing, right, at play. Whereas constructive criticism, I think you're talking about like some real tangible stuff that you've observed that is affecting something on a greater scale, right? And you're usually
you're accompanying it with some type of strategy out of it. Hey, this is happening, maybe I can do this. So at least there's like some type of plan or a way to address it.
Great point. Yep.
But like you said, editorialize. Well, isn't that interesting how a lot of people, we love to read editorials?
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny that we used to love editorial, like,
from a critical thinker, like journalist, that one with,
like in the old days, we loved editorials. Like in the paper, there's like one little part of editorial, but slowly over time, the whole outlet has become editorialized. That's the whole problem. That's why people don't like media anymore, because you used to be able to turn on the news and hear facts, for example, but now you hear opinions all the time and tone and all this stuff. Point. So that turns everybody off. So editorials have gone down, but now people have resorted to like going to pay privately for like their own favorite person who's writing. And it's funny because most of those writers, they aren't really editorializing. People are actually paying to go read fact-based stuff now rather than opinion-based stuff. It's just funny that I'm surprised mainstream media hasn't caught on to this. Like they thought they needed like to be like social media, when really what I think people are craving is something not like social media. They're craving someone to get up there. And I've heard that both networks, in the States, and CNN and Fox obviously famously removed two prominent people from their networks. And I heard that like they're trying to be more centrist. At least CNN said they're going to try to be more centrist. So they're going to get rid of editorializing a lot, which would be great because they have new ownership, right? So
really? They have new ownership?
Yeah. So fairly recently, right before, like about a few months ago, they had new ownership come in. So they're going to try to clean house. And that's when they started firing some of the people on there that were getting, accused of being too biased. And so they're going to try to go. And I think that's whoever does that wins. I think if they go back to like Walter Cronkite days where it's just like, here's the news, I think they'll win.
I remember the news as a kid. Well, I remember the news up until 5 years ago, and it was somewhat of an accurate depiction. Well,
as far as we knew,
regardless of war is never accurate.
But it was less emotional for sure. Yeah, less like opinion. Like it's slowly evolved into like people talking online, or like the gossip that we're talking about today. It almost has that tone to it, whereas you're not judging based on ideas, you're judging based on persona. And
hence why we're not even talking about volleyball right now. We're talking about
because it permeates. Because that's what's sort of, I think, making gossip going up. It goes up more among parents and among kids because of the society we're in. Right?
It's funny how the fact-based stuff is actually gated behind money now, where it used to be like free, you had to have TV or cable or whatever. But now, like, if you really want it, you have to like pay for this. And it's making it more, because the general tendency, it seems like, of the population was the previous model of, low payment, such as like TV, or it comes with a whole bunch of other stuff. And then you would get free, mostly factual, unbiased reporting of like global events and then in your community and whatnot. Now it's a complete opposite. And I just don't think it's happened so quickly that the adjustment period, it's taking longer than how quickly it switched, right? To get used to having to now search out information and actually make your own decision. I think so much of the population has just become accustomed to having their decisions made for them. Hence why this switch to gossip has worked so successfully, because now the opinion of the speaker is just so easily into all these minds, or they're just waiting. They're so accustomed to just having an opinion put into their mind, and then the resultant is kind of what we're dealing with now, right? So it's good to see it may be switching back, like if CNN pulls through on that.
Well, I think what's happened is, like, so when I was a kid, I remember and people listening, parents might remember, like, the 80s were called the me decade, right? And lots of popular like the 80s became a decade associated with like decadence, insecurity, and self-centeredness, right? That was the name of the decade, the me decade, because so movies like American Psycho, don't look that up, kids, but movies. Was that in the 80s? Yeah, that's sort of it's sort of mocking the late 80s.
Oh, it is.
It's made later, but it was mocking the 80s culture of Wall Street and the self-centered arrogance that everybody had about their business cards and their outfits, and so I think that was the start of this focus on me, and then outlets over time have changed their focus from here's what's happening to here's the way you think it's happening, and we're going to cater to what we think you are thinking.
Yeah.
Because as you've gotten more self-centered, we've catered more to you.
Yeah.
So slowly, and this is where
That's
we are.
a dangerous.
Well, and this is where we are. Yeah.
Right?
And as a society right now, we're kind of in this mode where like, what we're not talking about like the way things are. We're talking about your needs first. You know, like this is the evolution of it. So like the individual's needs
That's a dangerous relationship.
Are trumping. It's not, I don't know if I can use that word anymore, but those individuals' needs are superseding.
That's hilarious. I didn't realize.
Yeah, it's funny when you just say that word now because people are like, "Hey." But, either way, but no, the individual needs are superseding what is objectively out there.
Right.
You know, it's no longer objective truth. It's, you know, as they say, my truth or something. So it's an interesting time. But I think that this topic today is tied in with that because I think gossip is so rampant in volleyball now because people are living their own little story and they don't care about the accuracy of someone else's story. They're just going to put it through their lens of how they've been raised, how they grew up, their life story, and they're going to judge someone else's behavior based on their own lens, which is literally insane. Like if you think about it, right? Someone else's, like, it's so fascinating when you think about your life story and your little movie of your life, and you're going to take that movie, come up with conclusions, and apply those conclusions and values to someone else's story.
Who's doing the exact same thing.
Or, well, you don't know what they've done.
Right. But
you don't know what they've done. And maybe they're not doing the exact same thing. Maybe they're doing something that you find totally unacceptable.
Well, I mean, they're doing the same thing in that the majority of people are also coming to their own conclusions in their own little bubble.
Gotcha, yes.
And then, so you imagine, like, there's
and
14...
those colliding.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
That's what I always tell, like, you know, my kids whenever they're talking about someone they know or someone at school or some teacher. I'm like, you know, it's like we're judging them so based on our little story. Yeah. And they're not in that story. They got a whole different story. Like we talked about traffic jams and looking at cars. Everybody's got their own little bubble driving around, and their life is just as important to them as your life is to you. Yeah. I think that's something that people don't really comprehend, right? Like everybody goes like, oh, these jerks everywhere, and they don't know that they're just a jerk to the next guy or girl. So it's like, I think that's really why we're seeing gossip take off. Social media, of course, makes it easier to gossip because you can say stuff about people without seeing their face or not to their face.
The degree to which our attention is kind of grabbed from us definitely gets in the way of that, because this whole thing that we're talking about, to get out of that, requires just a moment of pause and reflection, right? And like that's the commodity of today's age, is like our attention. Like, so that there's huge money in that, hence why it's eaten up. And then we're failing in these areas of reflection, of consideration of others, and then pausing for a moment and being like, do I keep getting my hand in your camera?
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, it's on you anyway. Camera's on you anyway. So you just look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
No, yeah, we don't have that moment of thought. Like that's one thing I really want to make sure I taught my kids when they were little, that, you know, you can't judge it's such a basic value, right? Judging other people. Yeah. If you are judging and throwing in all these judgments about them rather than, like, you know, understanding for, wow, I wonder what got them there. Yeah. I wonder what, you know, that's a huge thing.
How do you initiate that?
It actually makes you very patient as a person. Like, I'll be honest with you, like one of the things that I've, in the last, I don't know how many years, but I really became more patient as I guess, I don't know, as I got older, but I don't know though. I think I was a little bit like this. I always had an understanding of circumstance. Yeah. So like,
I mean, you're a counselor, right?
Yeah, I was counseling, and even when I taught, and that sort of like, when I taught, I remember they always liked me working with the kids that had issues, and I never really had the same issues, but I really had a deep empathy for, you know, how messed up their morning is or how messed up that kid's day is. Yeah. And so when they did bad behavior, that's why I think I'm very non-judgmental. So a lot of people, not to brag, but like, I don't know if it's bragging, but I always found people would tell me as a joke, like, people tell me stuff they don't tell other people, and I don't know why.
I was like that too.
Yeah. As a kid. Yeah. I think it's the non-judgmental vibe, and they sense that, because like in counseling too, I remember I learned this, like, you shouldn't like react when someone tells you something. Right. Imagine if someone tells you something horrific and you're like, oh my God, you do what? like they'll cut you off, right?
Yeah.
So, and I found I always did that. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't react to it. Not as an act. I just understand that's, well, of course you would be like that because your life, like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's not a very popular opinion in society. The problem with that as a society is if you start to go that route as a policy, then you start to you feel like you're being too caring and not enough. But there needs to be a balance between, like, they call it carrots and sticks, right?
If you go too far with what, right?
Well, like, as a society, you can get into trouble like that. Because if you're like, like right now we're seeing the problem of our society's like, okay, safe injection clinics and homelessness, let's just let them be. We don't want to punish them. They've had a rough enough life, which I get.
Yeah.
But our society isn't doing what other countries are doing. In other parts of the world, they mix in the funding of assisting these people.
Yeah, right.
They don't just let it happen. They don't just keep injecting them. They don't just let them walk out the door. That's sort of what we're doing. Which
I've heard, I don't know, again, rumor, but like even people who are like new to the drug are finding ways into the drug via these injection sites. So
and I think our society's not very bright. Like, we're not following. I don't know if it's because we're run by pharmaceutical companies, but we're not using safe injection sites to get people help. Right. We're just using it to give them the injections. Whereas in other countries, they sort of use the free injection or the homeless shelters and roundups as ways to get them into mental health programs.
Exactly. That's kind of
which cost money, and we don't like to pay for.
Cost money, and they require intent and like a strategy, and like this is a terrible comparison, but it reminds me of like after the tournament, your kid in the kitchen, whatever. Gossiping to you as the parents about their experience at the tournament. It's kind of like getting this drug user into the injection clinic. It's a
very good point. No, it's a good point.
But
thanks for connecting it, because I was concerned. I was like, should we be talking about safe injection clinic? We were talking about story though, and how people got to where they are.
Yeah. It seems like that once they're at that location, that's the opportunity to then you can now interact with them, right? It's because like before then, like a lot of these people are out on the street or like living you don't know where, and so now that they're there, you can meet them, you can engage with them, and then you can start to this thing around.
It's actually amazing you brought that up, because that sort of like ties into constructive criticism, because I do want to tell parents, like, there is this notion among parents that we should never gossip with our kids, and they don't know the difference. Like, because if a kid does come to you with concerns about a teammate or wants to vent about a coach, a lot of parents say, oh, no, and they shut it down. They're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Even worse.
I don't see it. No, the coach. You listen to your coach. And the problem with that though is that you are like, if you don't, I don't want to say validate your kid's feelings, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, if you don't hear your kid and go, yeah, you know what, I see that too. Then what happens is if you deny it or like try to shut it down, your kid will stop talking to you, or they won't see you as someone that they can trust in anything that comes up, because they're like, so that's why it was good that you mentioned that, like, use that as a safe, like, sort of like the get them in the system. Yeah. They need to vent. There's nothing wrong with validating how your kid feels. That's what I want to talk about. So if a kid is talking about, again, not the gossip. So if they start talking about, I heard this about Sally, or I heard this about Steve, then that's different. And you should say, well, listen, we don't know. Or even if it's true, even if Sally or Steve are doing some behavior, like, the common one that comes up is like, drug use. Like you hear about older teams, even younger teams. You might get a kid that you've heard is like, or their Instagram or social media showing them drinking early, drinking too much, partying too much. Even that's right. Like, that's not like a healthy kid, right? There's something going on there that makes that kid do it. And we have no clue, so we shouldn't judge. And in many ways, if you think about it, those kids are the ones that probably need a positive social circle more than anyone else. So like, it'd be nice not to, you have to be careful, right? You don't bring them all into your world and everything right away, but just being someone that smiles and doesn't judge them would be kind of cool, right? Yeah. So that's where the constructive criticism crossover happens. Like when your kid teach your kid to stop judging based on your lens, right? That's the big thing. Your lens is totally different than their lens. Your history and their history don't match. So get them away from that, and then talk about things like, coach being unfair. That's not gossip. Player X being a bully or is really rude or like messes up and then only criticizes other people. That's not gossip. Yeah. Right. I guess if it's volleyball related, right? Is that sort of the way it goes? Volleyball and personality related, or treatment, then that's probably in the constructive criticism thing, versus if it's lifestyle, things they do in their spare time.
Well, I think it's even kind of good in a way, or normal behavior for someone to be paying close attention to the personalities of others. That there's actually a good opportunity kind of starting there, because they're considering their relationship with them. So they're in a broader sense concerned about how they fit on a team, right? So this is like the beginning steps of like someone being a leader or a team player, or caring about just having a social life, right? This is where they can learn these social skills, excuse me, which are applicable, right, all throughout their life. And here we're all about the development of the player, not just in the sport of volleyball, but like as a person on this planet, right? So it's a great thing in a way if they come home and they're talking about all these things. And like for sure, kids' frontal lobes aren't fully developed and stuff like that, so they're gonna think some crazy stuff. And they're likely having that like open space, because I think even in high school, like in a family that listens to them well, kids will still encounter other drugs because of that kid perhaps isn't having the best upbringing, and so they're the one bringing the drugs to the get together or whatever. But at least if your kid is around them or whatever, and they feel safe in that space at home, then they'll at least talk to you about it. Like whether they do like try them or not, like they try drinking or whatever, at least now they'll probably be like, hey, like I was at this party last night, like I drank some and this is what happened. And then, I mean, that's more of a better way to investigate it, right? Because that's kind of, I don't know, obviously don't have kids, but like,
yeah, no, but you were a kid and you see kids, you're around my kids quite a bit too. So, no, I think that, I think you said something good there and earlier too. Like the goal is, so whether your kid is gossiping to you or they're, talking constructively, critiquing someone or something, I think the idea is that you want to keep the conversation going. You want to make sure that they keep coming to you with this stuff so you can guide it.
Yeah, because
right? And as a parent, like it's very important that you don't want to kibosh this, because if you start cutting off your kid from, like I said earlier, from saying certain things, then they will stop telling you other things.
Yeah.
So keep the communication open by non-judgmentally. Now, like, so how to handle, like if my kid starts talking, crap about some other kid, I'm like, well, what do you think their life is like? That question there, what do you think got them there? That's a great question to ask a kid, to get them to think about, oh yeah, I guess life story matters. And like, so we talked about this before too. The more anxious our kids become, the less they're thinking about other people. Like teenagers are self-centered by nature.
Yeah.
And they are self-obsessed, right?
Yeah.
So if a parent is there or a caring adult is there who can say to them, wow, what do you think made them that way? So one, we don't know if it's true. Like that's the first thing I think probably comes out. And two, if it is true that the kid's like out of control or doing some things, what do you think got them there? That's such a good question.
You're practicing like compassion as a skill at this point. Like I think and I hope that we're all compassionate in some degree just by nature, but now like you're actually kind of exploring it further, like intellectually, and then seeing someone's entire life. But is it all out of I don't know, they feel slighted by this person, or is it out of curiosity? Like where does gossip kind of come from? It's usually like emotionally based, like they feel like, especially if they lost or something, and then they kind of want to blame this person because they heard something about them. Or is it just like they hear gossip? Like what is it about gossip that has that addictive thing? Like why do some people love to do it?
So
actually, I kind of think because it just makes them feel better.
Exactly, about themselves. Yeah, it's a form of bullying, right?
Because I mean, gossip happens like in the workplace all the time. This isn't something that is only isolated to teenage years. It's like a lot of adults are just like
100%
emotionally the way they were 12, 15 years old.
And so you'll still see so it's tricky because sometimes you're like we ask ourselves this, are we gossiping right now? Like is this gossip?
Yeah, we do.
And what that means, but we're talking about people, we often are trying to figure them out in defense. Like if it comes up with us and we're talking about people we know, 10 times out of 10 we're trying to figure them out. We're trying to see what is it that makes them, we've had those discussions about people, but, and that's a good way to live, but you're right. Like, so it's a power play thing. It's, people want to feel better about themselves.
I think that's...
And there's the in-group and the out. So look at us, we're normal and they're not normal. And, wow, I'm not like that. That's why it's so funny. Like, that's why the whole, like, what is the cast the first stone kind of thing, right? Like the idea that you're not
the teenage years, they are so self-obsessed, and it's all about kind of, you want to feel significant, and I think we all need to feel significant or unique in a certain way, right? You just want to make sure you're doing it in, I don't know how to say it, but like healthy ways. Like we all have to have that feeling, like, and we kind of do it in different, as adults, it's like the cars we buy or the homes we live in or like the way we dress. And like some of these outlets are positive or some of them are neutral, but then some of them can be not that. Some of them can be negative, especially on a community like type scale. And so here in those years, the teenage years is where they're kind of like learning that, because it's so true. Teenagers are so self-obsessed.
It's actually a very powerful thing to teach your kid that every teenager is self-obsessed, because that way, number one thing you could say is, this has come up before, like in lots of walks of life, where you tell your kid, they're too busy worried about themselves. They don't care about you.
It's so,
they're not judging what you're wearing or the zit that you got. They're too busy worrying about if you're noticing what's wrong with them or their bad haircut or.
So true.
Yeah. It's,
and those are the years, like kids don't gossip before those years anyways. 'Cause when they're 10 and stuff, like they might, I don't know, maybe, but like it's usually
when they're young, they're like a little more carefree.
Yeah, they're more in the world.
They're busy. Yes, that's what it is. They're not self-conscious yet.
Yeah,
literally, if you think about what the word self-conscious means, right? Self-conscious, not aware of self.
Self-aware.
Right? So the first 3 to 4 years, kids don't really have I think to say around age 3 is metacognition, when a kid's aware of the other's thoughts, and that there's aware of thoughts outside of their own.
4-year-olds definitely don't have that yet.
Yeah, they're thinking they start to think about
hanging out with my niece.
Well, they start to realize that they're having thoughts of their own, like around 4. Like, that's probably why school starts around that time. And then, but yes, they're too busy absorbing and observing, and there's no judgment. And then by the time you kind of learn a bunch of stuff, then you start, like, your mind almost looks for other things to do. It's kind of like our society, right? Like, so our society is so convenient now. And is so, like, we are looking for things to be angry at today, right? Like in our world, like we don't have someone coming to steal our food and to beat the crap out of us or take our dwelling. So we are like looking for things to get angry about. And I think we're seeing this all across society, including in the volleyball world. Like we are just, our minds are not occupied. Like, COVID was a great example, right? Where like poor countries were like, are we really, can we just worry about getting some food? And we're like, no, stay home. And we're like, well, you have the internet and you have, poor people were like, poor people in our culture and around the world were like, I think we need to stop this. We're like, no. Yeah. 'Cause eating is the focus, or finding food, or like staying away from
getting money.
Yeah. And disease and,
being
poverty.
Able to work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the priority, like we are, I think as a society, people are wondering why our society seems like it's losing its mind with a lot of things. It's probably because we have way too much spare time. Right?
Yeah.
And again, just as a history major, I remember studying, the history of leisure time. Right, history of leisure time is a fascinating thing to talk about.
Yeah, earlier on I was thinking like the value of boredom. Like we need boredom to come back, man.
Yeah.
Like,
well, early leisure was like linked to like appliances and conveniences, especially, families didn't have time, right, to do anything because they were always manual labor. So the more technologically advanced we got, the more leisure time we got. The more leisure time, then the advent of sports came along. Sports were invented because of technology.
Right.
So there was no time for playing games pre appliances and electricity, right? So once that happened, but now we've gotten way past the electricity, and we've got like ultra convenience after convenience after convenience. So now our minds are looking for extra things to do.
So this is around 1920s?
Yeah, 1920s, early 1900s. 1880s was like the first time like electricity was sort of first. But yeah, by the 1920s, things came.
Were we also warring between like the time of like 1870, 1860 to 1920?
There were smaller wars, but not the big. Obviously, the 1914 was the big one.
Yeah, this is off topic, but it's just like my.
Well, it's the evolution. No, but it's.
Or I mean, this thought I have.
Well, it's not too. Yeah, but it's still on topic because like you're talking, and we're talking about the. I mean, even gossip.
The thought I was going to make was off topic. I haven't made it yet.
Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
Just like the connection, because I have that theory that sport is just like an evolution of like hunting and. Right?
Oh no, the 100% it is.
It's not
a theory.
But I mean,
like
there's that weird time gap from like the 1860s to like 1920s, 1930s when leisure started. We started to have more time. So like, what was our outlet in that time in terms of physical movement? I guess it would have just been the labor itself.
Labor was huge, yeah.
Building up to the industrial age. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's massive physical labor. Yeah. Literally. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of answers.
Anyway. Yeah, well, industrialization, that's sort of what, I mean, we don't want to get too far off topic with it.
Yeah.
Remember, I was a history teacher, so I can't shut up about this stuff.
Yeah, so shut up.
But anyway, but spare time leads a lot. And that's another argument against the phone, like spare time. Like, this is why parents like to keep their kids busy, right? Because it keeps them out of trouble.
Yeah.
And it also keeps them from doing this gossip stuff, right? Like, they're too busy working on stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of keeping kids busy all the time, but I like keeping them doing some active physical things. I think that to me is the key to everything. Without the burnout factor though, like it has to be downtime, informal play. That's one interesting thing built in by accident into my kid's life is
there's got to be downtime and exercise. Well,
I get them playing, like, we have leagues that we run and they get to play informal volleyball. Has been the best gift I think that they've had, because anytime poop hits the fan and they're a club like regimented stuff, they can go play this informal thing. And I think that's probably why we created like some youth leagues that are non-regimented, because kids get enough instruction. They get enough instruction everywhere, right? Kids are like controlled everywhere. And so I think that that leads to a kid just needing escape and wanting to act out, and two, it probably leads to like just tension that adds to that desire to make other people feel like crap. You know what I mean? Because make yourself feel better than other people, I should say. So yeah, but constructive criticism. Yeah,
so I guess we should define that then.
Yeah, well, I think we did. What would you say?
I think the big thing is that it kind of comes with a relation to, or an investigation into that, especially if it's around another individual, like how they came to be the way that they are, and then like what the issue is or something, and then somewhat of a strategy. And again, a lot of it for me nowadays, just going through like, I'm 36 now, going through crazy things in life and like having, family members pass away and like going through really intense times in my life. It just really comes down to like what I can control and what I can't. Not to say that I can't control, and I can't control the outcome of someone else, but I can control myself and how I interact with them. Mm-hmm. And that empowers me, and it also kind of, makes me feel less annoyed, or like if I came from a point of being annoyed with them, it would kind of diffuse that, because it's like, look, I'm just going to try to be the best like leader I can be on the court. And if all I have to do is just give them a little bit of my patience and like just listen, and if that's all that is required of me, and if I'm capable of doing it, then I'll do it. And then for sure in some moments, like maybe in where this happens every so often, even like at work and stuff, where I'm just like having a very tiring week and I just don't sleep well, or something emotionally draining happens to me, and I actually don't have the energy for that patience for certain individuals. That's where I will then come off as irritated towards that person. And normally like my reaction is I just go silent mode. I just like don't talk to them. And then they get a very clear message that like I'm annoyed, or the ones that are self-aware get that message anyways. Right. And then like with you and I, like, because we've known each other so long and we're kind of similar in that regard, it never gets to that point because we're already aware of like kind of what's going on. And it's like, hey, you would ask me like, hey, is everything going on? Like, everything all right at home? And then, cause you just kind of pick up on it. Mm-hmm. Whereas in other, I think I told you about, like, I had something at work a few weeks ago. I was just like, I just didn't have the energy or the tolerance to put up with someone does this weird, unending sarcastic, and they're always outwardly, constantly sarcastic as a form of self-defense, because I know that in their life they're a little depressed, or but they also don't do many things to help them get out of it. So it's hard to. They're just in this process. They're gonna figure it out, right? And that makes me feel less. Well, I shouldn't feel guilty at all, anyways. But it makes me feel. I don't know. It's a strange thing.
Like guilty for your reaction, you mean? Or?
No, sorry, not guilty, but like sad for them, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I am sad for them. I want to help them, but at the same time, I realize I can't. I can only just try to be like a listening person and this and that.
Yeah.
And
there's a line too, right? To tolerance, like that you can't necessarily just be tolerant.
Yeah.
All the time. You have to couple tolerance with sort of addressing the behavior too, and then understanding where it comes from.
If you're too tolerant, it's going to eat away at you, right?
And if you're too tolerant, it just enables the behavior. Like, you have to, especially once you've hit a certain point in behavior, like it isn't early on in an interaction, but like if you've known someone for a while, you can confront them with it. Like just saying, hey, when you do this, I think it's not productive for you or me.
Well, and that's the issue, is that the more you kind of, you don't actually say things like that, like, and the longer you leave it, you're now dropping the ball on all these opportunities to actually have constructive criticism. So like, because that's just it. Like with this individual in particular, it's someone at work who's just constantly sarcastic as a self-defense mechanism. I've never really.
Oh, it's a self-defense mechanism? Sorry.
Well, I think it is, right?
I just threw in some sarcasm.
Exactly. But I can't, like, I've never brought it up to them. And if I ever were to do this, and I see this in so many other individuals, as soon as you try to bring it up, they get defensive because I'm now, so, you know what I mean? Like it makes me always think, who am I to tell them or to offer them what I think is constructive criticism, because then it just usually backfires.
Yeah, I know.
Right? They have to be somewhat of a similar mind.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about before, it's very tricky to.
I'm also not skilled at it. The better I get at it, I think I'll be able to.
Well, I think that's what counseling is, right? Counseling is getting into their life story, so you can see things through their lens.
Yeah, and that's when the doors are open.
And that's why counseling works, because it lets them go back and say, oh, I never even thought of this thing that affected me. And now once you find out maybe some triggers that cause some issues, then you can fix them. You can't just fix them.
Good point.
Like you can't tell someone, hey, like when we make fun of that Michael Jordan commercial, if you're doing drugs, stop it. Like it can't be that simple. Right?
And the difference between that is that they are opening the door. They are seeking out counseling. Yeah. Because there have been points in conversation with this person I was using in my previous example where all of a sudden they kind of do like let their guard down, and they do want like.
And just so everybody knows, this person Eric is talking about is me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yes, no.
He keeps doing this very passive aggressive. He keeps not using my name. This person.
I'm gonna throw this coffee at you.
Imagine that. This person, black-haired, handsome fellow. No, just kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just made me realize that there have been moments where. It was open and receptive to, they wanted my opinion or something like that, right? And then I would, I guess, offer it up, and then it would quickly go back to its previous state.
But you're right, they're not willing or ready, right?
Yeah, and I would just learn, like, I really can't change people. Like the thing I have the most experience with in terms of influencing others is just like leadership, like service through leadership. Or if I kind of walk this path and it shows to be effective, then people around me will just observe it. That's the one mechanism. I'm sure there are others, but the one I've seen to actually work the most for myself is just leading by example.
Yeah, and that's is why I think so many leaders that people love are that type of leader, because they come the quiet leader that isn't telling but is showing.
Yeah.
Right? Showing is so much more powerful, and this is what parents can do.
Because there's already no judgment there.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's also not an assumption. There's no judgment, and also it's like you said, like sometimes you feel like, am I qualified to tell this? Like I can't tell this person.
I do feel that. Yeah.
What to do based on, again, their story through their lens. How do I apply my lens to their life? So I'm just gonna put my head down, hope they understand that I have a story. I might be battling some stuff, right? Everybody, the whole everybody's fighting a battle we don't know about.
What's the term? Dysfunctional family?
Yeah. Dysfunctional family. Everybody's so messed up. I think, everybody's fighting a quiet battle nobody knows about, which is true. And then if you just put your head down and do the right things, and you hope other people follow, and the people who get it follow or join you, and the people who don't. That's really the way the world is. And I think you can pull your hair out and go crazy trying to change everybody, or you can just quietly do your thing and hope people see it. I mean, they will, right? Yeah. They probably won't see it if you start like, hey, look at me, and be like me, and be like me. Yeah. And that's what you said, like the counseling works because people seek it out eventually, right? Rather than just, you're not just going to go up to your friend and say, you know what your problem is? I do that to my kids, and they mock me all the time. Like, you know what your problem is?
You're just having fun with it now.
But also they like, I said, that's my job though. I'm your dad. I gotta tell you that, right? And that's what parents have to see themselves like here in this situation, these moments of like, gossip and constructive criticism. You really have to see yourself as an important person to guide the conversations to the right places, right? Because they are your kids. They're not the stranger friend. You're not equals, right? That's the mistake that a lot of parents fall into. They're like, well, who am I to tell them? Well, you're their parent, right? And you made them. And and there's a difference, right? If it's an adult or a coworker, of course you're not their superior, or even someone outside the family who's younger than you. You're not their superior. It's not your job. But in your case with your kids, they are looking to you for guidance. So this whole like, who am I to tell them is garbage. They're looking to you for it, whether they know it or not. Yeah. Kids crave order and structure and guidance from adults.
I was literally just going to say that.
And I can tell people this right now. I sat in my office as a counselor with 2 or 3 really popular kids in school who were like badass kids who got in trouble. And I remember one kid in particular that was like, drinking. His parents would give him weed because they thought they were being cool parents. And he was bawling in my office. Right. He was crying in my office saying he wished his parents would give him rules. I've never seen a 17-year-old boy
that's wild
like this, because most 17-year-old boys you would think would want as much freedom as possible. Yeah. But this guy was like, why don't they put restrictions on me? Why aren't they? Now, in some ways it could cross into blame because, he's like, well, you're 17. Why aren't you doing it? Controlling yourself. But it was an understanding of him that, when he was 15 and his parents were, not guiding him, not disciplining him, he understood that wasn't love. That's pretty whoa for a kid. He's a pretty intelligent guy. Yeah. And I was impressed with that. And I said, that's pretty cool that you realize that. But don't forget, your parents are also products of something. Right? Like they didn't just appear. Their life story, their lens got them to some messed up place where they felt the need to get high with their kid. Yeah. So parents listening, like pulling back or shutting down these conversations never works. You want to engage your kid in these discussions and not fester it. Don't pile on the judgment and the gossip. Steer it in a way of understanding the person's behavior. Where does it come from? And then if it is constructive criticism, I think there's nothing wrong with talking about the issue. Like if it is about an unfair coach or an unfair player, there's nothing wrong with a parent engaging in that discussion. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, you guys went through that analysis with, what we talked about previously, how you had to like leave the team. Your daughter. That was a line of, analytical thinking of the situation your daughter's in, right? And trying to find the line of tolerant, intolerant, respectful, disrespect, and then
beneficial, non-beneficial. Yeah. Like, there's benefits to really bad situations. And that's something I like parents, if you start with, like, because we started there with our kids when they were going through the coaching issues they faced their whole club career, by the way. So many coaches. It was always like, okay, is there some benefit here from you for playing for someone that is irrational, And there was for a couple seasons we did it. And we were like, okay, there's a lot to be learned here.
Yeah.
Unfair coaching, unfair playing time. Okay, there's a lot you can do here. There's a lot you can learn. You can learn to play with no fear. You can you can learn a lot of things from that. So we did stay in bad situations for a long time. But then you get to a point where, okay, is it serving? Is the good outweighing the bad here? Or is this like a waste of time now that we've already done this? Is there going to be like crazy consequences that are just going to make you hate the sport? That's
such a good experience for, I don't know, 17-year-old to go through.
Yeah, well, my kids now, honestly, you know what's so cool about it? Because we've had the bad experiences with coaches and, not so much teammates, but coaches. We have met great coaches, by the way, like just to be clear, like we're not like just anti-coach. It's just so rampant. And I think everybody listening to this is nodding their head going, it really is.
Yeah.
My kids now know when to spot red flags in bad relationships really early. They know when to sense, so they can sniff out the insecurities in people that are going to be dangerous. Because insecurities can be great, right? If they're guiding a person into better,
right,
and to be better.
If they're self-aware of them.
Yes, but insecurities that are
that was almost bad.
I almost spilled the whole coffee on all the electronic equipment. We could have died live on the air. No. Insecurities that can produce toxic behavior.
Yeah.
They see those right away in people, and it's very helpful for them. In some ways it's tricky for them. It's if they're trying to find a boyfriend.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, like, how many people have.
But it's good because the bar is high for them. They're so it's, but
you should go talk to my dad. You should go talk to him. You'd be like, oh, God.
But it's interesting because I'm having this conversation with some of our staff too. Like, it's hard to find the confident, well-adjusted person. The more we delve down this social media thing where comparison is becoming the norm in our brains, right? Like the comparison synapses are well established now, and the more we do that, the less people are going to feel about themselves. And society has always sought to attack our self-esteem, right? Like that's one thing I was thinking about writing about actually a little bit. Like the attack on self-esteem is like way back.
Oh yeah.
Ever since organized society, ever since someone got to the king of the top of the pile, they knew right away that, okay, all I have to do to control these people is to ruin their self-esteem.
That's central to our society.
Well, it's central to our healthcare every system. Relationship. Think about it this way. So let's suppose you're a good-looking suppose you're dating someone who's clearly better than you, right? 9 times out of 10, if it's an insecure person who's like the less of the value, you know what I mean? Less valuable. What do? They belittle, they criticize, they ruin the self-esteem. This is what abusers do, right? They make sure they make the person feel like crap. The person who's better looking or better person. Yeah. And then that person, so that's how they control them, ruin self-esteem. And that's how our society does that same thing, right? So kids, if you're parents, if you're listening to this, not only for yourself as parents, understand that, and we keep going back to the self-esteem building. Self-esteem building is how you root out gossip. Self-esteem building, because if you are building up yourself, then you don't feel the need to belittle others. Yeah. Right? And that's where the constructive criticism will start to is the only stuff you'll start to hear.
Right. And we were talking about like mental training before as like an off topic, and like you need a foundation of self-esteem. If now the whole concept of mental training is,
well, that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show. But like you need that, like, it's almost like you have to have a base under, like, if mental toughness is like calculus, advanced geometry, all this other stuff. Well, self-esteem is the foundation of like algebra and whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like,
it's the ballet of, because ballet is foundational for dance.
Yeah,
I used to be a professional dancer. I don't want to talk about it.
Is ballet the foundation or jazz? Or?
Ballet is the foundation of dance.
Ballet, and then you get in classical.
So please don't question my dance knowledge.
I was going to mention your
don't make me pull up my
ability to moonwalk, but
that's why I used to be a Michael Jackson impersonator. Yeah. Not like impersonating, but could dance like Michael Jackson. Before I gained a little bit of weight, I bulked up too much, got too muscular. Now I look like Elvis near the end.
Now it's like Jupiter walking, right?
Now it's just laying down. No, I don't say like there's young Elvis, then there's old Elvis. I'm in old Elvis stage.
Yeah.
When I go to the toilet, I fear for my life.
What was it like? bacon peanut butter sandwiches or something?
Banana. Wasn't it banana? Peanut
Oh
butter?
yeah,
I think so.
No, it was banana and bacon and peanut butter.
Are you sure?
I know there was. It was weird. Like I've eaten banana peanut butter sandwiches. Those are all right.
Well,
I'm pretty sure.
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah.
Engagement, right? We need engagement on our social media outlets. So tell us in the comments. Nobody's listening. Anyway, you were saying something before.
To me, self-esteem is foundational for.
Yes.
Like if we're going to talk about mental training, which we will at some other point, like I know we're going to get to this point of like self-esteem, right?
Yeah, because nothing works. Nothing works unless you have a good self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of funny. Like you can read
works.
You can read all the self-help books. You can do all the classes.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like
it's not going to work.
You'll read all these things, but it's none of it. Yeah, it's so funny.
That was a great book. I'm going to change my life tomorrow. Oh wait, I hate myself. Right after the bag of Cheetos. Nothing wrong with. No offense to Cheetos. By the way, Cheetos is a sponsor.
Yeah.
I'm Cheetos and Porsche.
Eating them right here. There's some in this chair. No. Yeah.
Nobody watches the video, right? This is not a video, right? That's me. That's you. But you buy Cheetos and Porsche. That's all we want. No, but I think, so parents, I think that if we were to wrap this up, we could probably wrap this up. The idea that constructive criticism is good, even if your kid is gossiping about players, make sure you welcome that conversation. Don't judge it. Don't scream at them for gossiping.
Yeah, they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah, and just guide it.
They could just be curious or emotional thing or whatever. Yeah. Sorry.
And the age. Yeah, the age. You're right. Like at that age we talked about off the top, kids are going to gossip. And it's very tempting for an insecure kid to want to feel powerful. Of course, like we were all there.
And aren't like kids at that age absolutely paranoid about being gossiped about? Like that's all I remember as a teenager was like how others are perceiving me. I was just like trying to like live in such a way that others wouldn't say. And then when I did hear gossip about myself, it was like devastating.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
yeah. No, I know. Yeah. No, it's the worst thing because like.
But maybe tell them that because like that's what stuff like this
like
does.
Like
right?
how would you like it kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big part of the discussion for sure. Like,
what did your kids say that one day? Oh my God, I'm gonna be a meme or something like that. They were
exactly.
So worried she's gonna become a meme. I thought that was so funny because like obviously memes weren't around when I was in high school, but like oh fuck, I mean fudge. I was dying when I heard that.
Well, it's too. Well, our company went through a thing a few years ago where we were getting like we went into a new city and a lot of people were hating our company because they thought of us as like the big bad wolf. Like they thought we were some big
you had
company
like saved the league.
Moving it.
You should have made mention of that.
Well, yeah.
But how?
We did email them all. We did tell them.
Oh.
We did eventually tell them when we asked.
Okay.
We did tell them like this is what really happened.
Like we're saving your
But
league.
my kids thought it was the coolest thing in the world that I was getting hate and gossip on the internet. They're like, hey, it's kind of cool, Dad, that you're getting hate on the internet. I was like, yeah, I guess it's a sign.
Yeah. I mean,
no such thing as bad publicity.
Well,
I guess there could be.
But another topic.
But yeah, but no, I think, it is the worst thing that a kid could go through is gossip. And that's probably why, because they know it's so powerful and damaging, that an insecure person loves to gossip because they're keenly aware of it. Yes. Yeah. They're keenly aware of how much power it has. So they're like, oh, I can't wait to do that to someone else because I'm weak inside.
I mean, Mean Girls, right? Great movie.
Mean Girls. Yeah. Well, that was the name of one of my conferences was called Mean Girls when I was in guidance and I was a counselor and we went to this conference. It's a big one. They tour around actually. And there's a whole industry now based on the mean girl phenomenon because it's very sneaky. Like, because the ones that are the bullies are often, at least in the female side of things, are the people pleasers. So like they will never show it. They call the queen bee, right? And I think volleyball parents and players can relate to this, but the queen bee, sometimes like the queen bee bully, the main one, the coach loves her. Teachers love her because she's like super polite, super respectful. I saw this when I was coming in to help out with my kids' teams. And I'd be coaching, like guest coaching. And I knew because my daughters were on the team who some of the toxic personalities were. It doesn't affect how I coach. I just keep coaching. But I saw them like super receptive and like, okay, smiling to the authority figure when I knew who they are with the players. And it's very fascinating because that's what enables the behavior. It's the cover. So that's what Mean Girls, the movie, was so great at showing. That's why Tina Fey wrote that, right? And so when she and Amy Poehler
How do you
wrote,
know all this weird?
You know Tina Fey and Amy Poehler?
I do know.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live. Yeah,
well,
they wrote
personally.
Well, because I was so impressed with that when I knew that because they're so smart, right? Those comedians and writers for SNL back in the day. So when she wrote that, I was so keenly aware of like she must have researched the crap out of it, or maybe innately understood it. That of course you're going to be. I mean, you know what else it reminds me of? I don't know, older parents or parents who ever watched Leave It to Beaver. One of the funniest. You ever watch it?
Yeah, I have.
One of the funniest characters that we all loved as kids on that show was Eddie Haskell. Eddie Haskell was the guy who was Wally's best friend on the show, and he would always be miserable. He'd say the meanest things to Beaver, like just like he'd call him a little squirt, and he'd always criticize him and make fun of his head and all this stuff. And then the parents would walk in and he'd go, "Oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Cleaver. That's a lovely dress you're wearing." And it was so funny. Everybody loved it because everybody knows that person, right? It's the person who just puts on the show for the authority figures.
Yeah.
And then, but is quietly just a mean.
That's hilarious.
Eddie Haskell. If you look up clips of him on YouTube, it's so funny. He was like my favorite character.
And of course, this was a successful show because it's showing something that everyone knows is true.
Relates to. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that show was good. We showed that. Actually, it's funny because it was before my time. But when I was a little kid, we were big into watching those reruns on TV. And then when my kids were very little, we watched those shows. And they thought it was hilarious because it was also neat to see like the dad was like very like a lot of people make fun of those 50s shows for being too idealistic, and yes, for sure there's a part of that. But there was also a lot of real in there. Like the dad would be frustrated with the kids, and it was real. Like they would get at like some interesting insecurities of the dad, and the mom would say like, you want this for you, not for the kids. And I think that's something that volleyball parents can relate to.
I mean, the cool thing about those shows is it's a history lesson in the evolution of society. Yeah, 100%. So, like, you can, if you're wondering where we're going, well, take a look where we're kind of coming from, right? Like, interesting.
Yeah. Huh. Or I always found, I don't know what it is, but I always found value in showing our kids like old TV shows.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe it's about learning values. Of course, there's a bit of like, I want them to see what I saw, but also I like them to see that the world wasn't always like this. Like you said, even if it's just seeing how the show was filmed.
Well, I was gonna ask you if this was the beginning of like the dopey dad character. You know how like
not so much. See, that's what's cool about that, because back then the dad wasn't dopey.
Because remember, what's the recent show?
Every show.
Yeah, exactly.
King of Queens.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yes.
He's the dopey dad.
I mean, Modern Family. All of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there were shows that didn't do that, right? I know Cosby went through what Cosby.
Yeah.
but his show was interesting, right? His show was trying to not show a dopey dad.
Yeah.
Funny dad, but not dopey. Intelligent, educated. Yeah. And it was cool because it was like, back then it was so funny. Like he did this show about a black lawyer mom, doctor, father.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to show America, this is normal. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not going to make it a mission. This is normal. And nobody thought anything of it. Everybody watched the show, thought it was great. So he was trying to do something interesting there.
Yeah.
And then same with like the dopey dad phenomenon came along a little. I mean, it was still there. It started. I think it started like in the 80s, 90s, but it was an interesting thing. But
Back to the Future. No, you don't really get into the dad.
No, well, he was a dopey dad, but as a young kid. But
yeah.
But it was funny how circumstances. He's talking about lenses and history of people's lives. That movie was kind of cool. Because it showed like if your story was a little bit different, your outcome. Remember how different the dad was in the alternative universe with the confidence versus the issues that happen. It kind of ties in with this life story thing. Like, but no, I think that.
Got something in my.
Oh. Yeah, just drink it down. It'll go down. Keep drinking.
Cheetos.
It's the
Cheetos. Yeah.
That's funny because I had a pore stuck in my tooth the other day. Anyway, so I think the key is to engage your kids in these discussions. Obviously, guide the gossip more towards understanding and compassion, and back towards like treatment on the court. Because sometimes the behavior of a teammate can be affecting treatment of other people.
Yeah.
But keep it to that end result. Well, and if your kid learns that kid has a rough life or must have some serious stuff going on, they'll probably it won't bother them as much, right? Like,
Yeah.
The old saying was keep in mind, know where it's coming from, know who's saying this, right? And that's the idea, is that you have to understand what their issues are. And if you understand they have issues, then the bullying becomes less powerful. Anyway.
Yeah, and the last thing you want is your kid to be held back through their own prejudice.
Yeah.
Like, why let that be a limiting agent to their growth in a sport?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want them to be a slave to, or like a victim of this sort of
Because, this
behavior.
is something that we all know as adults goes on our entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
So the sooner you can kind of...
Yeah, and it's a good thing to go through it.
Yeah.
Right, that's the one thing
It's a normal... Everyone does go through this.
Yes.
Right? It's just how long are you going to stay in that? Are you going to change? Are you going to finally kind of see through it?
Or and if you don't take your kids' gossip talk and guide it, then what happens is you're going to risk that your kid will just continue. They'll see it as powerful, like the gossip.
Yeah.
They'll continue to use it as a power against other people.
Like if you're making it taboo by avoiding it or something.
Yeah,
right?
You'll miss out on the opportunity to tell them that it's not power. It's actually a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And then they will continue to use gossip more and more, and they will become the bully, right? Like every kid that gets bullied becomes a bully if it's not harnessed, and if they don't understand what bullying really is. Bullying is a sign of weakness, not strength. And it's not just a line. It's like we talked about for here. It's like that's what it is. That's the source of it. So you need to catch those moments and help your kid navigate them. And again, if you try to shut down content, like actual content of court behavior and coaches' behavior, that's awful, because a lot of parents mistake that for gossip. Don't shut that down. You need to engage in that, understand it, hear your kid. You can even say things like, "Yeah, I see it too." It's true. I don't know, but here's what we can do about it, right? Always sort of change it into action. Usually the answer is worry about yourself.
Well, and now we need to start looking at the reasons why parents might be shutting it down. Like,
because they mistake it for gossip.
Well, that, or they're too lazy or something, or they want to get back to doing their thing. They want to look at their phone, or they want to do this, or they want to do that. And it's just like an easy way to be like, oh, that's just gossip. Like, don't do that. It's not good.
That's a good point. Or they don't want to deal. It's exhausting. Some parents are tired and they're like, I can't fix this problem. So they're like, just shut up about it.
Yeah. Like I came home.
I've had those moments.
Right.
I told my kid, just shut up and play. But I get it.
Like I came back to my parents' place on Friday, and like my sister's visiting with my niece, right? 4 years old. And, so it was, I stayed over. And then Saturday morning, like, I'm up and I'm tired, and I haven't seen her in like a few weeks, and she's just like all over me, wants to go and do stuff. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to do this, but I'm like, am I going to like be mad at myself if I like just brush off hanging out with my niece? Like, right. I think I will. And like, and then I was like, Eric, what are you doing? Like, do you have to do something? Like, I want to work out. I'm like, well, you don't even have that good of a workout schedule already. So just like go and hang out with your niece. Yeah. And then you'll work out whenever. Right. And then
and this is why I have a dad bod now. And you keep making fun of me.
Well, because I
put off the workouts to hang out with my kids. That's why it's called a dad bod.
No, honestly, I can understand that, because that's what went through my mind. I'm like, because I'm looking at my niece, I'm like, if I have kids one day, like I'm gonna like
prioritize.
Yeah, and then so there goes the workout, there goes the sleep, there goes the thing. In comes the dad bod.
Yeah, that's why it's called a dad bod. So,
yeah.
It's kind of crappy, and it's kind of sexist, because we don't call it a mom bod. Right,
yeah.
we let the dad off the hook, and
it's funny. Dad thing.
Society. Well, it's kind of, but it's also like it kind of makes it seem sexy. Like people are like, "Oh, I love dad bods," and it's like, so a guy can get a belly and get a little fat, and then and women will still revere it, or society says women should revere it, but we don't do the same for women who actually give birth. Women give birth. They go through the whole thing,
and then they have to get back to.
And social media never has a hashtag mom bod like it's sexy.
Yeah,
I think it's rooted in sexism, the dad bod phenomenon. Just a little.
This is another topic. Yeah,
it's kind of a topic, but it's also like kind of like who we let off the hook for. I don't know. Like, 'cause, the dad, if anything, it's easier for dad to stay in shape.
Yeah, because he doesn't have to grow a watermelon and then get rid of it.
Exactly. I think that's the medical term for babies, right? Yeah, quite the watermelon in there. I don't think it would be funny
for a few weeks, and
it's
really want to try it out.
I think it'd be funny. This is sort of like if I ever went into like official like comedy, I would always like. I guess that one routine I'd love to do is like if your doctor used like street lingo. I won't go into the example.
During a pregnancy?
Or like during an examination, just said, can you pull out your whatever and can you show me your... just started using... That's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
That the doctor's not really... I don't think this is... this guy or girl might not be licensed. Like,
man.
Like, so imagine if
let's take a look at your equipment here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a nice package you got there.
Yeah. If your doctor just started using informal terminology.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, if you're doing gossip, stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah, I think
nice
we're done.
Potatoes there. You got some...
Stop it.
Big danglers.
Stop it. It's a kid show. Yeah, I think we're good, right? Examples.
All the street meat.
Stop it. Okay, we're going now. We're turning this off because Erik is out of control.
Oh, that'd be funny.
All right, see everybody next week while Erik just goes R-rated on his examples. Using my amazing joke.
What's the big idea?